Step inside the walls of the 25-year leader in classic and custom boat restorations. Watch as the meticulous craftsmen use the most advanced materials and processes in the industry to restore, repair, and build some of the most beautiful boats on the water.
All right, dude, I gotta do this. Hello, and thanks for joining us here at Making It Metan as we bring you a new series of episodes where we go back to our roots, which were restorations. And restorations are what I consider to be the greatest riding and looking center console ever built. And that is the legendary Carl Moseley design Seacraft. Well, before we got ourselves wrapped up into whalers, our main focus was Seacrafts and other classic center consoles. In fact, the first boat to roll out of Metan was a 23-foot Seacraft. The Seacraft legacy goes back now almost 50 years, when a man named Carl Moseley first came up with this very unique hull design that to this day is used by a number of both production manufacturers as well as custom boat builders, like Tribute Boat Works and this awesome dude who I met a few times, Jimmy Floyd of F&S Boat Works. He builds the set custom sport fishes, totally, and like us, proudly, based on the original variable dead rise hull of Mr. Moseley. Well, you notice I said proudly like us. That's because the two most recent additions to the Metan Classic collections is our Barretto Cove 26 and our Glen Cove 32. Both based off the original design Seacraft by Mr. Moseley. But like us all, we made our tweaks. But the bottom line is they are all based on this very unique design. He developed what was termed a variable dead rise hull. It basically combined three different variable dead rise angles. He designed the running surface using three different V's. You can see it. When you look at it from the back of the hull, you can see 1V, 2V, and 3V. With the deepest V along the center line for speed. And then as he goes out to the next plane, Mr. Moseley would say that's for comfort and control. And then that last plane in V, he would call the moving out V. He then added two strakes that lessened the dead rise at lower speeds, and it also increased the load carrying capabilities. This gave the boat an incredibly smooth ride in South Florida waters as well as up here in the Northeast. These boats are legendary. To say we've done our fair share of Seacrafts is a bit of an understatement. And just when I think I can remember each one, I think of another. Starting out with the very first boat to roll out of Metan, and that was Linda's Worry, which Billy Gibson, you're gonna have to write in and remind me exactly what year it was, but I think it was a 73. Then we had Solway's 7623, which will always be one of my favorites. And not just because yellow is one of my favorite colors, because Dave Solway became an incredible friend of mine. In fact, you'll see him off in the background in various episodes that he's one of those secret weapons who I talk about who have helped us out tremendously in the wood shop on a regular basis.
We've all heard of a Jewish carpenter, but we've never heard of an Irish Jewish carpenter.
Another Seacraft that I really enjoyed doing was Try Again, which was built as a tow-behind tender for the motor yacht Trilogy. The crazy thing about this build is we actually converted it from an outboard to an IO. Needless to say, the list of Seacrafts has grown over the years. The many different 20-foot center consoles that we've done, to the endless list of 23 models, not just center consoles, but in different cuddy cabin configurations. Now stay tuned, because when we come back, we're gonna dive into, well, maybe that's not the best terminology, but we're gonna begin our series with a restoration of a true family heirloom that we did 18 years ago that ended up getting hammered in a storm back in 2019 that we had to bring back again, the beloved JB, for the second time around. So stay tuned. Hi, we're back. And if we're gonna start off a series of episodes about JB, we might as well film this segment up on JB. So ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce you to the beloved Clancy's family's JB. This is what you call a true family heirloom. It's been in the same family for 40-something years. It's absolutely mind-blowing how fast time has gone by. To think that we've been involved in the history now for almost 20 of those 40-something years. And so that's where I start this story of JB, the 1973 23 Seacraft. I have many photos of the restoration process that I will share throughout the episodes. However, I'm going to utilize a lot of video that I have of a restoration of really one of the absolute favorite builds I've ever done, and that is, okay, I'm gonna brag a little bit, the winner of the 2012 Best New Boat Overall at the Newport International Boat Show. And that is a Metan 2011/1979 23 Seacraft inboard jackshaft vessel. Yes, new. Although we started with original hull and gunnel cap skins, we completely remanufacture these boats using the highest quality products, materials, and processes of the time. And we rebuild them to new boat construction with new stringer systems and composite vacuum-infused decks. All of which you will see in detail as we work our way through the phases of this restoration. We began with completely dismantling the boat, removing every single part and component. The men removed the gunnel cap and then removed the deck, exposing the stringer system, to cut them open to remove the water-saturated foam, and then removed most of the original laminate. They then dug out the completely rotted core of the transom that was nothing more than a brown sponge. After all that was removed, we then proceeded to give the inner bowels of the vessel a detergent wash to remove the years of disgusting grime and sludge. Letting the vessel dry out for a few days, it was time to go in there and grind the inner hull surfaces, giving a fresh, clean inner hull to begin our build of this, or really any other vessel. All this is not pretty work, nor is it the funnest phase or the most satisfying phase of a restoration. However, it all needs to be done. Having the inner hull nice and clean, fresh like a new canvas, to begin the structural build of the transom and the stringer system, we did just that. Starting with the transom, which was constructed of 2 layers of 3/4-inch plywood, laminated and epoxy under vacuum, as one solid core to be glued and laminated into the inner hull. We then began to lay out the bulkheads and subfloor to the stringer system. The guys started to wet out a couple layers of 1708 that are going on our outboard stringers. What they do is wrap the edges with some 17-ounce biaxle, then go over laminate with 2 layers of 1708. Then put them in a bag. These are our bulkheads that the boys laid up yesterday. That's 17-ounce biaxle, 2 layers on the top, and 2 layers of 1708 over.
completely encapsulated, an epoxy on the bag.
We have always been big fans of epoxy resin in the combination with using organic materials such as wood. Wood has never worked well using fast-curing polyester or vinyl ester resins. Why boat manufacturers continue to use it is beyond me. However, the higher-end boat builders, both production and custom, very rarely use either polyester or vinyl ester resin in the combination with wood. Some of the most badass custom Carolinas and Florida Palm Beach bad boys are constructed out of plywood laminated in epoxy. And these boats will be here long after we're gone. With epoxy staying open longer in its green stage, it has time to soak into the pores of the wood, truly laminating the material to the wood for a long haul. After we had the transom and the stringer system completed, laminated to the inner hull, we then finished it off with a material that we still use to this day, and that is an epoxy bilge coat made by International Coders. This is a long-lasting, bright white epoxy, almost like an epoxy-based gel coat. It's excellent for bilges. That is absolutely will never let any water impede into the laminate, not to mention it cleans up excellent with just a little bit of bleach and hot water, keeping the bilges looking new for the long haul. Well, we got to take a break. And when we return, we're going to get into not only the construction of our decks, but we're going to follow the evolution of where we are today with the construction and processes of the laminating of our decks. And that is something called vacuum infusion. So stay tuned and see you when we get back. We're going to talk about a process we use to construct composite parts like decks, deck hatches, and even three-dimensional parts such as engine covers and even the full lamination of hulls. And that process is called vacuum infusion or resin infusion. I've been working with vacuum infusion process all the way back to the time when most boat manufacturers had never even heard of the term.
Yeah, we should have cut the flow medium back a lot more on this. I don't know why we carried it right, and you would have ended up damming it a little bit more in these corners.
The origin of vacuum infusion started in the early 90s when the scrimp technology patent was coming to an end. This process was used to construct aeronautic parts as well as secret vessels for, well, you know who, the United States military. Scrimp technology was invented by this guy, Bill Seaman, as a means to meet the demand and requirements of the projects for the U.S. Navy. Like its now stepbrother, vacuum infusion, it's suited to build large-scale structural composite parts where high strength, durability, and lightweight are very crucial. I was lucky to meet early on two gentlemen who were innovators in the vacuum infusion process and in the manufacturing of epoxy resin. That with a simple change in hardener can be used as an infusion resin. The name of that product was Maz Epoxies. One of those guys was Tony DeMilla. The other one was J.B. Carell, who's a good friend of mine still to this day. Anyone who's anyone in the marine industry knows J.B. and the many companies and manufacturers that he has either owned or been involved with their innovation. Tony invited me down to his laboratory. It's got to be 25 years ago where he showed me the process of vacuum infusion. Right here, 25 years later, this is the very first hatch that I infused. We used either foam composite or marine grade plywood for core material. We drilled a series of holes, 2 inches on center, perforating the core for the resin channels to transfer the resin through the core, laminating the fiberglass on both sides at the same time. We dial in the fiberglass to resin ratio better than any hand layup could ever conceive. Back then, it wasn't as easy getting these so-called infusion materials. We used to buy our flow medium from a manufacturing company that made the produce netted bags. We'd use that material as our flow medium. Until we were able to buy plastic bagging material in volumes, we would buy it from the same company that manufactured oven bags, like the bags used in the old days with shake and bake. Over the last 25 years, the method has stayed the same. However, the process, the equipment, and most importantly, the materials have changed drastically, both with advancements as well as availability, making it easier for us to tackle bigger infused parts like our own new boats. With today's unlimited amount of supplies readily at our hands, we're able to infuse 30-foot decks with the confidence of creating strong, lightweight, 100% solid composite parts. Clancy's boat was the second deck that we vacuum infused. Back then, unable to get very wide rolls of plastic, we vacuum infused the deck in 2 sections. To construct the deck, we use 1-inch, 4-pound density foam, doubled up in crucial areas to 2 inches, wrapped in 5 layers of 1708. We then vacuum infused 1 section at a time, fiberglassing them into 1 part after we glued them in place to our prepared stringer system. You'll notice the aluminum plate grid system on the top of our stringers. We've been incorporating this aluminum grid into our Seacraft restorations for a long time. And to this day, we use aluminum along with other composites like G10 and Penske board into our stringer systems for both restorations and new boat build. The aluminum and tappable composites such as G10 allows us to be able to drill through the deck and mechanically fasten the above deck components such as the console, leaning post, and T-tops, ensuring that these components are now tied, mechanically bonded directly into the structure of the vessel. Throughout the remanufacturing process, you'll notice the many upgrades in the structural build from the original design, further giving us the confidence and knowledge that these boats that have been around for 40 years will be around even longer the second time around. Well, actually, you'll be able to see the benefits of our structural processes when we get into the refit process at JB in our next upcoming episodes. But for now, we're going to take another break, and when we return, we're going to get into the core replacement process to the gunnel cap, where we don't use vacuum infusion, but we use another process called vacuum bag. So see you when we get back. Coming back to you. We're going to finish up this episode with the remanufacturing process of our deck lid. Like the rest of the plywood core in this boat, it was a rotted mess. During the dismantling process, you saw the men lift the deck lid off the hull in preparation of flipping it over to begin the removal of the rotted core. There were so many gaps in the laminate because they didn't taper the edges of the core, and they didn't take the time to roll out the fiberglass to make an attempt at alleviating any gapping. These gaps became areas to trap moisture. In fact, anywhere there's a gap in a boat, specifically below the waterline, these are breeding grounds for moisture to get trapped, which then begins to the rotting process of the wood. The men cut along the edges of the laminate and easily removed the delaminated fiberglass from the rotted wood surfaces. Then scraped and chiseled the rotted core from the inner laminate. Then they gave the deck lid a detergent and solvent wash, letting it dry out for a few days while they made the templates to fabricate the new core. They used the templates to lay out on top of the sheets of composite core, which was 1-inch, 4-pound density perforated foam. Using the same templates, they cut 4 layers of 1708, preparing for the gluing and the lamination of the new core material. The lamination process that we use is called vacuum bagging. Unlike vacuum infusion, we're not pumping the resin into the laminate. What we're doing is something called a wet layup, with vacuum assistance. We first put down 2 layers of 1-ounce mat to act as a glue between the inner laminate and the new core. The men then wet out 4 layers of 1708, taking the time to smooth out all the edges with their hands, knowing that the vacuum bag was going to do most of the work for them in eliminating any possibility of gaps like we found from the factory. With the vacuum bag and the sealant tape prepared prior to us beginning the layup, the men then pulled the vacuum bag over the deck lid part, checking the sealant tape for leaks as we began to pull down a vacuum on the part, making sure the part was staying true to shape and not twisting in any way, so it stays the shape of the hull and we don't run into any issues at the time of assembly.
Now, you see this? See how this has... So, look at this.
Well, he's got this screwed together.
Yeah.
And that unscrews.
But you see how this is winging in a little bit? This actually has to tuck. And I think that's what's holding it. See, this is holding it down.
Yeah,
After the laminate was dry, we removed the vacuum bag material and cleaned up our rough edges. We then moved the deck lid into the fiberglass shop to begin the exterior repairs, along with the rest of the fiberglass repairs for the hull. All of which you'll see on the next time when we continue making JB Metan the first time around. Thank you. I'm Mike Borrelli. See you next time on Making It Metan.